Christians are very judgmental. I felt betrayed by God as well because I felt like I was a Proverbs 31 woman, and everyone could attest to that. And people still don't understand how my marriage ended up to now, because I felt betrayed. It's why rich people commit suicide. That's why we find some people we don't even understand, but how did they get to such a point? I had this idea of marriage that I wanted, and I wasn't getting it.
I'm your protector. If you see me crying, what will you do?
I mean, everyone will speak for themselves. Even I want a man that's vulnerable. I want you to speak about your problems to me. I want you to cry.
All right, greetings and blessings to each and every communication. My name is ImeTheFinest, the sensational doctor 103. Welcome to yet another episode of Wisdom and Purpose with Ime, where we help you earn more wisdom, become happier, healthier, and more wiser, as well, sometimes more healed. So on this particular episode, I'm joined by Chigorimbo, a crochet artist, entrepreneur, and mental health advocate. So let's take a quick short break, then we'll come back as we talk to Chigorimbo. All right, welcome back. Today we are joined by Chigorimbo. Sue, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I really appreciate your presence.
No, thank you for having me.
How have you been? We've been trying to record this podcast for a while. We've been finishing. How are you?
I know. No, I'm good. It's been hectic. It's been hectic. Work has been hectic, travel and all, but I'm good.
All right. Thank God, because I believe everything happens for a reason.
Yes.
And when the time is right, it will happen. So I always start with this question. What is your earliest childhood memory that has defined the person that you are today?
Okay. So now I'm a crochet artist. So I think as early as grade 4. So my mom had this routine where she was particular about how we looked. So she would do our hair twice a week, Saturdays and on Wednesdays. So Karukwa Saturday for school, on Wednesdays, right? And then she will redo your hair. And by Rwadzisa, she had a really tight hand. So I had to learn how to do my own hair for me to avoid her doing my hair. So I started doing my hair as early as grade 4. I would braid myself. I would wash my own hair. So this whole crafting journey started with me being a hairdresser as young as grade 4. So I think that's the earliest childhood memory that has a relation to what I do now. Yeah.
All right. Growing up, we have some aspirations, some dream jobs. What was your dream job when you were young?
So I was really smart, and I was very good at math. So I always said I wanted to be an accountant. I didn't even know what accountants did, but I knew it had something to do with numbers because I was really confident with numbers. So it was always I want to be an accountant.
But why accountant?
Because I was good with numbers. Yeah. So I knew accountants worked with numbers, and I was very confident in math. I was very good at math, so it was always an accountant.
All right, let's talk about your transition from different career paths, from engineering, banking, and sawmilling to entrepreneurship. Which one was the worst among those jobs, and which one was most educational?
Okay, so just after high school, I went into banking, and then the picture was hazy. I didn't know if I liked it or not. And I didn't like my boss. She didn't like me as well. So at least it was a contract assignment. So it was only for a while. So when my contract ended, I went to engineering. I was attached at ZBC. I was doing apprenticeship in radio communications. So I went for that one because I was just idle. And my aunt thought, why not apply? So I applied for that one. But I had never seen myself as an engineer. So I would say in that context, it wasn't the best.
Was the ZBC one?
Yes.
Or you was engineering side or not the communication side?
everything. It was radio communications is more of electronic engineering. So it was
Isn't it telecommunications?
it is telecommunications, but with a lot of engineering.
All
Yes,
right, all right.
we were assigned to the engineering department, and then I got married just after I started that stint, and then I fell pregnant, and I had to work night shifts. So
It was it.
then it became hectic, and that's how I pulled out of the program because I couldn't manage, I couldn't handle going to work at night, and pregnancy hormones and stuff. Yeah, and it wasn't a job that I was really keen on. It was more like passing time. So I would say that wasn't the best. I can't call it the worst. It wasn't the best. And then I went back to banking. And I absolutely loved it there because I really thrived. I loved the atmosphere. I loved, especially when I got to work with customers directly. I loved that.
But how did you get into banking?
So I went into banking first after high school. Way back, getting a job wasn't really hectic. You'd go to the Ministry of Labor, you'd submit your qualifications, and I went to the Ministry of Labor in Mutare, submitted my qualifications. Within the week, I'd already been called for an interview at then Zimbank. It's now ZB. So that's how I initially got into banking. After I left ZBC, I just started applying randomly to random banks, and then I got a job at Royal Bank of Zimbabwe. Yeah, that's how I went back into banking.
All right, let's keep the ball rolling.
Mm.
What are the major lessons, or what did you learn more about yourself from being a banker from the whole journey of being a banker to the crochet artist?
So from banking, I learned that I was actually a people person, that really good at customer care and customer relationship management. I think that was my strongest trait, and that's what I learned throughout the process because the customers loved me. They absolutely adored me, and I loved them back. And then when I went into sawmilling, I explored a side that I didn't realize. I always thought I would be a career professional and one day become an executive in the banking sector. But then when we went ahead and started a sawmilling business, I realized that I was very good with the administration side of running a business. So I took care of that part, making sure wages were paid, reconciling bank accounts, and making sure returns were done. So I realized that I was a really good administrator when it came to running a business, and also I was also kind of a good negotiator because sometimes I would go and source for contracts with forestry companies like border timbers. So I started discovering new traits about myself, and I also discovered that I actually enjoyed running a business versus being an employee.
All right, to talk about the challenges of running your own business
Yes.
versus being an employee.
Mm.
But let's talk. There is this statement that I heard many people saying, "We planned, but God decide." So, does this statement relate to any of what you was planning, and then God decided put you in something else which is different?
That's the story of my life.
Let's talk about
Yeah,
it.
that's the story of my life because everything I had planned, God just, diverted me and took me another way, a completely different direction. Because initially, I always thought I was going to rise in the banking sector until maybe I'm an executive. And then when we started running a business, I realized, oh, now I enjoy running a business. And I thought, and this is a capital intensive business where you're speaking big numbers, where you're dealing with really big numbers. And then God redirected me to run a small business that is very much down upon. And initially, I didn't even think, well, I thought this is a way to just, take care of my kids because this is what I have right now. But then, here I am now. Um, uh, it's grown bigger than I even thought, and I never thought I would make money from using my hands. I thought my brains were always going to be the ones that will put money on the table because I knew how to run these big businesses. But now it's from sawmilling to a crochet business. So that's the story of my life. Redirection.
What do you think about it? Because sometimes it's tiring. It, it doesn't feel good at first. Just good also. I'm planning to do this, and God put you in other direction, which is very different from what you wanted to do.
I was I was upset at first because I had to go into the crochet business because I had to take care of my kids after my marriage ended, and this was during lockdown, so I couldn't get a job anyway. There was no way I was going to look for a job during lockdown. People were out of jobs during lockdown, so I had to work with what I had, and I'd started crafting as therapy during my marriage when things were not going really well. So when eventually my ex-husband left, I had to figure out how to take care of the kids, but I already had this thing going, and I thought, why not push it more? If I push it more, push it aggressively, it could possibly, help me out until I get a job. It was always until I get a job. And then I started pushing this thing. And then it started working. And it started, pushing me to platforms that I'd never dreamt I could be on. That's when I started realizing that, you know what, this was actually God's plan. He wanted to divert my path so that I could realize my purpose, because I started enjoying what I was doing. I was really having fun doing this because this was my passion. I'm good with my hands and I enjoy creating. And now it's giving me money. And now it's pushing me to these platforms. And now it has become a ministry. So at first I was upset. I won't lie about that.
Now, how are you feeling?
Now I feel so good. I'm not exactly wealthy because a lot of people ask me about the adjustment from running this huge business and having this kind of life where I could afford the car I wanted, I could afford the life that I wanted. But now it's always hand to mouth. But I'm content. I'm at peace because I've been able to transition and just move this thing from something that's looked down upon to a business that's viable, that's actually helping me put food on the table, send my kids to school. My son just completed university, my eldest. The other one just
With the
completed
crochet money,
with
yeah.
the crochet money. The second one just completed his A levels. He will be going to uni next year. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm content. And I know bigger things are coming. So I no hard feelings at all.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about how you manage to excel in that industry that is looked down upon. What's your secret?
I think it has been consistency and passion. If you lack passion for anything, then you're not going to be consistent. You're going to give it up. But I've been passionate from day one, and I've been very consistent with my work, and I've been aggressive in pushing my hustle and putting my work out there. I think that has really worked for me. Leveraging on my e-commerce skills because that's my qualification. So leveraging on those skills and putting my work out there, because a lot of people are not, you find that a lot of people want to try business, but they're not either tech savvy or they're not keen on putting themselves out there. But I've done that. I've put myself out there. I've been consistent. I've pushed the hustle from day one right up until today. I struggle to think of a day where, or maybe 2 days, 2 consecutive days that I've not felt like working. It's never like that. Each time I feel like, oh, I'm too tired today. The moment I just put my head down to rest, I'm like, hey, urukutorara. So I've been consistent. Yeah. And I've been passionate.
All right, let's talk about passion. What is passion, and how do you discover your passion? Because most people, they don't know what's inside there.
I believe it's something that you love naturally. You don't have to be pushed to it. It's something that when you've got this love for something, and no one has to tell you that you like this thing. It's something that's born in you. So for me to discover my passion, and a passion is usually paired with a gift. I believe everyone is born with a gift, but I've been fortunate and blessed enough to discover my gift, and God had to do some shaking up in my life for me to discover my gift, because I would never have discovered this gift. Trust me, I was a content kept wife. I had everything I needed, and when things were not going well now, I needed to do something to keep my head off things, and I bought knitting needles. Knitting needles are like what, 50 cents for a pair, and I bought some yarn, which is also 50 cents a ball. And that's how I discovered my gift, because I started making these things and I would post them on Facebook, and people would be like, wow, oh my God, so you're so good at this. And then the next thing, I'm making the other thing, the other thing, the other thing, and I'm enjoying this. So if there is something that you really enjoy doing, that you do without being pushed, you can actually tell even amongst your children that this one is passionate about this one loves cooking, this one loves photography. My second son loves photography. You don't have to push him. If there's one thing I can ask him, can you come and take pictures of me, and he won't complain. That's the one thing, he doesn't complain about that, and I know he's passionate about that. My daughter is now passionate about crochet. I have to, each time I get up, I've fallen asleep, I wake up and she's still crocheting. So it's something that you're not pushed by anyone to do, something that you just love naturally. So people overthink. That's the problem, because you say that some people never really discover. So because we are so accustomed to, and social media has a big part to play in this, because we see all these flashy lives that are shown on social media, people buying big cars, people getting big cars, and so on. And now we think that's all we think about, that's all we focus on. So we are not keen on working from scratch and starting small. So that's why you find that a lot of people actually ignore their passions, because your passion might be gardening, and it might be starting with a small patch at the back of your house. So passion is usually paired with a gift. What's your gift? Sit down and really think of what you're really good at.
All right. As of me, I think I beg to be corrected. I think it's our education system which kills our passion, which kills our gifts. Let's talk about education system. What do you think about our education system? And if you are to be given an opportunity to transition it, what are the most things that you will change?
I could talk about that for a whole day, because
Or summarize.
because I've tried. Because I'm that's one thing that really makes me upset, because our education system is designed in a way. Okay, so the new curriculum has kind of changed that a bit. They've tweaked it a bit, but I don't think much work is being put in trying to foster this love for our God-given skills, using our hands. Our kids are being trained to be employees, because you see, the push for STEM, of course, technology is good for us as we progress and develop as countries, but there is that ignorance towards the arts and the skills. That's why you find that people will look down upon a plumber. People will look down upon someone in construction who's a builder. People will look down upon auto mechanics and whatnot. But those trades are what really pay if you go to the Western world. Those people are getting paid
Exactly.
nicely too. So I feel like there needs to be a shift in our educational sector, so that the focus is not getting our kids to be doctors and lawyers only, but to nurture our kids in what they are good at. One kid is really good at athletics, but they are not the most intellectually gifted kid. Push them so that they can thrive in that area that they're gifted in. So that's my problem with our education system, because I've tried to
As of me, you push back as much as you can. As of me, I think our education system, it's because of the colonial mentality. We still need to decolonize our institution.
but our colonial masters have moved away from that system.
But that system they have created, we have some endless impacts.
Yeah.
So as of me, what I think can work is those in position of power, they were supposed to decolonize the institution first. As we
Yes.
get the so-called independence,
Yes.
then we will move in the right direction.
Because I always imagine, I started when I was 40. So I imagine if I had started when I was younger, where would I be right now? I'd be way, way better than I am. And now people tell me, Sue, you're really good. But imagine if I started when I was younger. So, and I see that in my daughter. She is 10, but already her work is impeccable. She's really neat. And I was talking to someone the other day, and they were telling me, so do you know she's going to trend way more than you do? Because I'm trying to nurture that talent from a young age. And it would also really help with taking our kids from their gadgets, from taking them from the TV, because our kids are glued to their gadgets. We've got a drug problem right now. So using hands is addictive, and it would get the kids away from all the bad stuff. That's why I try to push for this.
All right, let's talk about making money online. Most people, if you say, I'm doing content creation, I'm doing this, they say, koba samchachagarini, kochi, lot of stuff. They don't even understand that you can even earn a living through the internet. What message do you have for people out there who don't understand the impact or the good side of social media, of the internet, and what's your take or what's your push on 9 to 5 jobs in this modern era?
I feel like 9 to 5 is don't go around. If I can put it, no offense to anyone, but I feel like Uranda because you don't have that freedom. I remember back then when I was at work and a relative passed away, and each time a relative passes away, you have to go no kumbira off, But when you're your own boss, you've got that freedom and that flexibility. I want to go on holiday next week. I'm too tired. So I feel like 9 to 5s are like that, one. And then when it comes to the internet, I always try to educate my kids on this, on how an invaluable resource the internet is. And a lot of people don't realize it. People don't realize that once you buy data, that should be an investment and you should get a return on investment. My daughter used to always ask me, Mama, you're always on Instagram, you're always on Pinterest. And I'll tell her it's research. Because I go through Instagram not to look at, to keep a track of celebrities. No, I don't waste my time. They are making money, putting their stuff on the internet for you to watch. But what are you doing to make money from the internet? Because there is so much that you can do. I always speak about YouTube. YouTube it's like a wealth of resource. I can go there literally today and learn to be a graphic designer, and tomorrow I'll be a graphic designer. But people don't realize this. People buy data and they don't get a return on their investment. They are just there on TikTok watching, Ningi,
Exactly.
Ningi, did you see Danielson delivering flowers? And my boyfriend is not doing this. And that's all people are so absorbed with. But the internet is such an invaluable resource. It's a wealth of resources that you can use to better yourself. You can learn gardening. You can learn how to bake. You can learn how to become a fashion designer on the internet. So people don't realize that. And content creation is important now when you're running a business. That's where we are. Saka, you cannot run away from the fact. I used to shy away from TikTok because I'm a shy person naturally. So yes, I'm a very shy person. So I'll be thinking, putting out a video, what would I say? What would I do? And I would also struggle because I struggle even posing for a photograph. So, but when I realized the numbers and the reach, because the reach is what makes the difference.
Exactly.
And also the fact that it's 24/7, it's ubiquitous. You can access the internet. If someone is accessing my videos right now, someone will be accessing my videos midnight, ndakarara, So people don't realize how much of a resource we have with the internet. Of course, there's the bad side of the internet, but I choose to take the good side. So it's an invaluable resource. You can't afford not to be getting a return on investment. Even watenga bando or $1, make sure you get $5 out of it. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. So now let's take a quick short break. Then we'll be right back and we'll talk about By Mapara.
Okay.
All right, welcome back. We are in conversation with Sue Chigorimbo, a crochet artist, entrepreneur, and mental health advocate. So, Sue, let's talk about By Mapara. Mapara is Chidao, Chidao Mutupo, something like that. I've noticed that many people now, they don't believe in Mutupo, maybe because of Christianity, because of their churches and other stuff. What's your take on that? But first, let's talk about By Mapara. What is it?
So initially, when I started, I was knits and crafts by Sue because I was also knitting. And I was doing a lot of crafts. I was doing bottle crafts, rope crafts. And then when I stopped knitting, it became Crafts by Sue. But I realized Kuti, a lot of crafters have that same name, Crafts by Ningi, Crafts by Ningi. And I was like, no. But it took time. And then it was always that each time I delivered an order and people would be like, okay, what's your mutupo? Thank you so much. This is so nice. What's your mutupo? And I'll be like, Mara. So you can call me Mampala or Mapara. And people will be like, by Mapara. Oh, this is nice, a bag by Mapara. That's how I moved from and became by Mapara. On the beliefs, I believe that it's just identity. Yeah, it's identity. I believe, and I don't want to lose my identity. I'm a strong believer, but I also believe because you find that in the Bible, there's the tribe of Judah, the tribe of, and the tribe of the tribe of the tribe of. That was their identity. I believe this is our identity as well as a people. So I'm from the Mara, Nachikona Mombe tribe. That's how you identify me. And I'm proud of that.
Except the identity side, what's the significance of mitupo?
Okay, vanhu vanozoda kuzofananidza zvekuti hunhu and so on. Yeah. So isusu tinonzi like panodeketerwa mutupo wedu, it's like vamaromo, ana maromo. I always wonder what it means. Kutotaurisa here or is the literal meaning? I don't know. So a lot of people vanozoda kuzotsvaga the significance and the similes and anamkanya vonzi vanojamba jamba. Isusuwo tinonzi tinojamba jamba namara. Probably kakungwara, you know. We're just street smart. Maybe. I don't know. So I'm not well versed in that area because I don't take it that way. I just take it like you know, tiri vanu vano. It's our identity. Yeah, I take the positives.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. In one of your interview, you said that if there is no evidence of abuse, people won't believe you. Can you share your experience on that and what experience, or what that experience has taught you about yourself and about people?
So we're generally very judgmental people. And I'm sorry to say this, but I feel like especially Christians are very judgmental. And we are comfortable with certain sins, the sins that we don't do. And whatever wrong someone else is doing, we're like, I don't die, you know. So that makes us a very judgmental people. And because we're judgmental, we don't take our time to listen. Because when I was going through my mental health issues, I shared. And looking back, I feel like I even overshared. Because it was just a cry for help. It was a cry for help. I was, you know, everyone who could listen, everyone who cared to listen, I would tell them, Shakadai. But people only listened for a while. And also people, because I had this nice life, people were like, you know, so people discredit your pain and they tone it down because you've got this kind of life. But no one understood my pain because I'm the least materialistic person. I don't care about the finer things.
So let me cut you there. Isn't it really nice to cry in a Lamborghini or in a Mercedes Benz than to cry in a cabin? Than to laugh in a cabin? I mean.
No, pain is pain. Pain is pain. Trust me. For me, I'll speak for myself. I remember there was a time when I'd gotten a new car. And I met this mbuya of mine in town. I was still staying in Mutara and she got into the car. She was like, Muzaya, anduzgo chichema. Unondo chema uri muno muzi motera ko mzibango rako. And at the back of my head, I was like, she doesn't even understand the pain that I'm going through. So money, maybe for some, but speaking for myself, it never made the pain easier. Yeah, it never made. I had this idea of marriage that I wanted, and I wasn't getting it. So getting a nice car or getting a nice phone or having my kids in a very expensive school didn't make it better. I wanted to be happy. So it's all about the inner happiness. And sometimes people will discredit your pain because, and also especially if it's emotional abuse, and there is no evidence of the physical abuse. People are like, and I get a lot of, I've seen a couple of influencers that go out and say, and they give out this narrative that if you just use that money irimo mumba wogeza and wodira fuel yako and you go out and have a nice time, that the pain goes away. It doesn't. This pain is still there regardless of all of this. I would come ndorarama mikozi hotel ndo itasay woenda wono masajuka wodi, but the pain was still there because the problem had not gone away. So people think that money takes away the pain. Then I struggle to understand those people, because then I question Kuti, all right, if it's your marriage that's not working, do you even really love this man if you are not in pain because of what's going on? Then I start questioning that. So if there is no evidence of abuse, people will be like, no, if can also then it's okay. We kind of tone it down. But buzinenge shinya munaka ifeka. Anenge shinya.
How can we address those situations? Because I've noticed that yes, we might think that people, they are rich, yes, they are happy, but I've seen many people who are rich, but some of them are not happy emotionally. They are going some stuff. How can we address those situations where people are going through some emotional abuse, but no one is giving them an ear?
It's unfortunate, especially because of our culture. I would always get backlash because of that. Kuti, you can't be telling people what's going on in your marriage, especially. You should just keep it to yourself. And then someone is dying inside. It broke me because I spoke to a certain point. When people were still willing to listen, I spoke. And then when people were no longer willing to listen, when they were like, Asur Kuyema, you've got this nice life, and people stopped listening to me. Oh, Panepang Pakuti, you're talking to someone and you're pouring your heart out, and they're not listening. That's how it became for me. So I stopped sharing. And that's what pushed me to the edge. Because no one cared to listen. Everyone thought, so it pushed me to the edge. And it's unfortunate, Kuti, in this day and age, our culture has a lot to play with it. Our religion has a lot to do with it. Because church you go, they teach you to enjoy marriage. We're taught to enjoy. We're not taught to how to enjoy marriage. All they tell you, even ukanda kitchen party before a wedding, bye. And this is a week before your wedding. You go kuchina kuya. That's all they are teaching you. Murume kana achita zvakati, iwewe ingogeza, mubikire, mudai. And I did all of that and it didn't work. So it will only drive people to the edge. And I wish there were platforms where people could actually vent. And now I even advocate for men, because men are going through the most. And men are not allowed to be vulnerable. Our culture does not allow for men to be vulnerable. Men are not allowed to cry. Men are not allowed to whine. Men are not allowed to talk.
Yeah, how would you feel? I'm your protector. If you see me crying, what will you do?
I mean, everyone will speak for themselves. Even I want a man that's vulnerable. I want you to speak about your problems to me. I want you to cry. And because I'm a nurturer by nature. I want to take care of people. I want to make people feel safe around me. So I wish we had a lot of that around, that people that want to make you feel safe enough for you to speak about your problems. Because men are under a lot of pressure to provide, to protect. And I always say this, but I know I'll get a lot of backlash for saying this. I realized the amount of pressure that men have when I became a single mom. Because there is that convenience of being a wife. The convenience of telling your husband, amagesa kupera, gasra kupera, anyama yede kupera, fizi yakudiwa, even if you're doing everything together, but we just kind of pass it off to the men because the man is the provider naturally. But that is a lot of pressure. When I started experiencing that, for everything they are coming to me, they don't now go to their dad, they're coming to mama kurukudia chakati, mama kurukudia. I would even get to a point yekuti mwana wangu angaru college ndikaona ari kufona watoto, oh my god, ari kudei kurukudiwa, it's to do with money. So men have a lot on their tables, but they don't have spaces where they are allowed to talk, because varume obviously magara munopanana pressure futi yekukombeana kuona kuti uyakutofamba nemota yakati and I'm here, zvinhu zvangu. So, and men don't get those spaces. So I wish we had a less judgmental society. I wish we had spaces where people would listen more for both men and women, because people are being driven to the edge because they don't have those listening ears where they can just vent without being judged. Kuti zvakandiomera handina mari izvozvi zverent, and people don't judge you and feel like you're not doing enough. Yeah.
So why can't we create those or those spaces?
Yeah, it starts with us. It starts with us. But it's difficult. I love what Friendship Bench is doing. There's Friendship Bench where they have benches where you can go and actually share with a stranger, and you just vent. But I believe they can't cater for the whole of Zimbabwe. So we need more of these spaces, especially for the boy child, for the men, for the women. And we move away from this because I feel like the church is the worst place right now to go for advice. Yeah, especially to do with because Panachan VS, and they're kind of rigid in their way of thinking. They don't want to acknowledge the background and the reality. Yeah, they don't want to acknowledge reality. They just want to keep it within the scriptures. No, Bible not shakati chi. But the reality is this: how do we deal with this reality? So I wish more people in psychology would create these spaces. And also I feel like sometimes people don't go for therapy because we feel like this is by the book. We want lived experiences. I've noticed each time I tell my story, when I do my classes, so I do group classes at least once a month. So when I do my group classes, I usually share my journey. But I've been through this, Ndaka attempted suicide, I'm here now, I beat depression. And a lot of people relate. A lot of people come back to me and they're like, so wakanti batsira. I remember I was asked to speak at some event in Mutare by one of a non-governmental organization. It was an event, Yema Women Entrepreneurs, that was hosted by Mutare City Council. And they asked me to speak, and I went and shared my story. And trust me, there were 3 women that reached out that were at the brink. And they came to me, they were like, you've just given me hope. Because and where you've come from, you've really given me hope. So I wish there could be more platforms where people share lived experiences, but also there's the problem, people are not keen on sharing. And I remember when I first shared on Twitter, I had attempted suicide. Commit suicide are very selfish. Yeah, they are very selfish. Because so I wish we had more platforms like that where people would gone through stuff can share their lived experiences.
But let's talk about suicide. It's a very sensitive topic and a broader one as well. I was reading something about the functionalists. They say people, the society causes people to commit suicide. And what's your take on that? Can you share your experience on the suicidal thoughts and how did you manage to overcome them? And what's your message to someone maybe who might be watching now and who is thinking that, no, I'm going to commit suicide after this?
So for me, it wasn't about the people. It was about how I felt. Because I felt betrayed. It got to a point where I felt betrayed.
By people?
By people, of course. But it was more of the shame. I think for me, that was the biggest part. It was the shame. Mutare is a small town. And Mutare one room. Everyone knows everyone and everyone is in everyone's business. So each time I was out, I thought people knew what was happening to me. I thought people knew everything. So it was more of the shame. And it was also because I felt like no one was listening. And I'd become a shell of myself. Because I would be crying. I would be crying every other day. The moment when I'm thinking of my problems and I'm crying. I'm bawling my eyes out all day. I could not eat. I didn't want to bath. I didn't want to do anything. I was not interested in anything. So it was just the space where I thought, where you start comparing now. But okay, this is my life. I'm alive right now, and this is how I'm feeling. It said that in death, there's no pain, there's chi. And I started doing those comparisons. And also I could see, my kids could see I wasn't happy. And I could see they were worried. And I thought, okay, when my mom passed away, it hurt a lot at first, but it got better with time. I got used to it. And we carried on and we were okay. We turned out fine. So, vana vangu, I guess they're going to be okay. It will hurt for a bit, a lot. They'll feel like I let them down, but maybe one day they'll get to a point where they'll understand. But sometimes lives gets really hard. That's how. And people always ask me this question. That's how I thought about it. And I knew Kuti, this was going to hurt them. But I felt like for them to see me like this every other day is going to mess them up more. At least if I'm out of the picture, you know how it is. Munakafa, munomrangarira sterek every day. The first few days, the first few months, the first few years, you're like constantly thinking about that person, and that then they just kind of disappear into the shadows. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to disappear in the shadows, and they're going to be just like cherishing. Like now, what I do with my parents. My parents divorced when I was very young, and my dad, but now when I look back, and I actually miss him. I didn't spend enough time with him. They didn't have the best of marriages, na mama. But I miss him and I still wish he was here. So I figured, no, with time they'll forgive me and they'll start cherishing the happy moments. So that's how it is when someone is in that space. It's not like they're entirely selfish. You're thinking about all these people, but you also kind of no, they'll be okay. And I actually had a case in point. I thought of my own childhood and losing my parents. So suicide is complex. It's not one size fits all. Yeah, it's not a one size fits all. Because that's why we find ourselves wondering why rich people commit suicide. That's why we find some people we don't even understand how did they get to such a point. Because it's not a one size fits all. Everyone goes through the emotions differently, and the emotions are entirely different. So for me, it was that I felt like I'd been embarrassed. There was no point in living. And also because I was an orphan, and I felt like, this man was my everything. So, you think, yeah, I've made it, my marriage. And my marriage was perfect. It was great. And then until a certain point where it wasn't. And I could not understand. And I gave it my all. So I also couldn't understand. I think also one thing, I felt betrayed by God as well, because I felt like I was a Proverbs 31 woman. And everyone could attest to that. And people still don't understand how my marriage ended up to now. And I could not understand, Kutimari, why would you let this happen to me when I work so hard for my marriage to work? Zvese zvamunotaura kuti mukadzi anofanira kumuka usiku anochengeta hama I did all of that. So we can't exactly give it a one size fits all.
Does that experience change your relationship with God?
No, because now, years later, now in the position that I am now, I understand that it had to happen. It had to happen for me to reach my purpose, and this is my purpose. Creating amazing stuff and ministering to people about how you can turn your passion into profit. Now I understand that my ex-husband had to play that part for me to even try out knitting. I was never going to buy a pair of knitting needles if my marriage hadn't given me trouble. So you find that a lot of people, I've been blessed enough now, and I'm extremely grateful to God now, because now I understand his plan. And I understand that verse, Jeremiah 29, verse 11. Yeah, good. For I know the plans that I have for you. And our God is an orderly God. He's not a God of disorder. He has appointed times. And my marriage had to end for me to get to where I am.
All right, let's talk about divorce. Many people, they take it lightly. Especially, I've noticed that, yes, when the elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers.
Yeah.
Many people, they take it lightly when parents divorce. This parent go this way, the mother goes this way, father goes this way, and the kids are now wondering, a lot of thinking, they are doing some mental juggles inside there. So as you mentioned that your parents divorced, how did you manage to cope up with that trauma, to be specific?
So I was really young. I was the eldest. I was grade 2 when my dad left. And they had a sour relationship. My dad was physically abusive, and we would see him beating up our mom. When he left, we just thought it was normal because we were too young to even know kuti marriage chi and how is it supposed to work. So when he left, when he packed his bags and left, we thought, maybe it's one of those things. And uh, I think even ukadaundibvunza kuti trauma yacho, I don't even understand it because I just grew up and I knew kuti my dad stayed somewhere else. And he passed away akazoshaya under grade 7. He stayed somewhere else. We would see him occasionally. Would come on Botora toenda kubora. He was a staunch Dynamos fan. Would rufaro navo todzoka and so on. And then we were raised by a single mom, and our mom was very strict.
So I've noticed that your situation is very different from other people because the most traumatic part is your parents divorce. Yes, it's okay. You are getting food. You are getting everything. Right? But the moment that you go to school, and other kids will be like, and you'll be like, and you even some teachers, they will bring out topics that made you think that, oh, I'm not in a normal household now. And that's where that traumatic experience they start to emerge. And as you grow, you start thinking that, no, maybe I'm lacking this because of this. Maybe I'm doing this because of this. Maybe this misfortune is caused by this, and a whole lot of stuff.
It was never like that for me. People always speak about that, about the traumas, and I struggle to relate. I struggle to relate with that.
So you are the first person that I'm seeing, that I'm having a conversation with like this, and you are saying you never experienced that.
But the only takeaway for me was the kind of relationship that I longed for now. When I was thinking of getting married, I told myself, because my mom was raw. And I would, because I was so young and I didn't understand why she would get beaten, I would be thinking, maybe I didn't give up a day now. So I was always very nice, very respectful, because I didn't want my marriage to end. That's how it affected me. That's how I was affected, because I was so keen on making sure that my marriage was going to be successful. It would not end like my mother's relationship ended, because I want also to live happily ever after like everyone else. But you're right, there's a lot of trauma. I see that in my kids. It's not easy for them not having their dads there. I see it when I go for prize giving and it's just me and other kids are coming with their dads. And also they feel the absence, obviously, when, there's something going on and their dad can't be there. Or it has to be mommy only. So it's a difficult space to navigate. Obviously, there's traumas attached. Like for me, my trauma, I guess, was wanting a functional marriage, wanting a man that doesn't beat me up. That was, I guess, that's the trauma that I carried through. It's not easy, especially on the kids. And I also always get a lot of flack for saying this, that as single mothers, sometimes we also make it really difficult. Because I've tried to create a very healthy co-parenting space with my ex, where I allow him as much access. I don't have vana 2 weeks and I say no. My kids go kukwambuya vavo, their paternal grandma every holiday. The relatives can come over. The kids can go there. They spend time. I don't have that animosity now, because I realized that this had to happen. So if you don't heal enough to get to such a space, then your kids are going to suffer immensely, because pachaita kudonzerana. And we'll also get just the mother is constantly telling the kids, your dad is a deadbeat. He's not doing this. He's not. I'm doing all of this. But you're not doing any good to your kids. It's more trauma on them. I always tell my kids that if your dad hasn't done this for you, he must be in a tight space. And it's a phase. It will pass. Because he's your dad, he loves you. I try to instill that in them. And also because my sons are now grown, I also try as much as possible to tell them that you need your dad more now than you need me, because you're transitioning into men. And he's the one that can take you through that journey, not me. I've done my part. I've taught you how to bath and clean after yourself. I've taught you manners, but now you need your father. So the trauma usually, there is a trauma coming from the divorce, but I feel like the trauma usually is caused by the parties of the divorce, how we handle the separation.
What I think also is the kids need closure. What really happened?
Yeah.
If they know the trauma,
I
will
was very
definitely
open
go
with
out.
my kids, and I'm also really open about to them about everything. We actually had a sit down with them and we told them, and also Vanga Vakura, so they could see what was going on. So there
Oh.
was really no need. Of course, I had to explain some things to them. Could you know, I won't be getting back with your dad because of this is the stance. How do you feel about it? So pane kamwe kachikaranga katinako kekuti we don't involve vana and we say kuti hanzi it's none of their business. It is their business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. I've noticed that we are running fast out
Out
of
of
our time.
time.
Yeah. So let's talk about in a world where people use your story to attack you, use your story against you. Where did you get the courage of sharing your story? And what are the lessons that you have learned by sharing your story and the response as well?
So I've noticed that people deal with issues better when there are other people that they see kuti they've gone through this. So relatability is very important. So people had put me on a pedestal because of my craft. Anoruka, she's good at what she does. And then I realized, no, I need to share my story because it's going to have greater impact when they know kuti, this is how I started the craft. So that's how I started sharing. And I've learned that by making it relatable, it helps so many other people. Yeah.
All right. What legacy do you hope to leave?
My legacy is to be remembered as the woman who broke glass ceilings. She changed the narrative around hand skills. The one person that I always say I kind of brought the sexy back to crochet. Madhoiri anga akashoreka kwaingonzi vanhu vaenda kusouth africa kumadhoiri vaitomboita mari here. So I want to break that narrative and be remembered for that person that instilled confidence in that child or that woman or that boy who had a skill but didn't know how to make it using that skill. So that's how I want to be remembered.
What daily habits have you found most effective to manage mental health?
Crochet, I don't stop. I do that every day. Every day I'm making something. Every
Any
day.
burnout?
Yeah, sometimes I do get burnout, but I've managed to tone it down. There was a time when my pricing was a bit on the low side, so and I had targets, so I would be making like 3-4 bags a day. Now because my pricing is at a point where it's good enough for me to make even 1 or 2 bags a day, I'm okay. Yeah.
All right. See, what's your advice to some women or men who are going through some emotional abuse? What's your message to them?
Find something that keeps you busy, something that you love. It worked for me. Well, it might not work for everyone, but try it. Try finding something that will keep your mind off things. I realized the moment I started knitting that each time I started knitting, I didn't think of my problems at all. I'd be focused on creating. Yeah.
Any advice or tricks that made you overcome the self-limiting or self-doubt beliefs?
Put your work out there because you will never know how good you are if you don't share your work. So for me, it was sharing the work and having people be like, "Oh, this is so good." Yeah.
All right, as we close, I want you to, which camera? Look at this camera. Make sure it's on focus.
Okay,
Look at this camera and read a letter you would write to an 18-year-old Sue. Yeah, this is your time. Look at this camera.
Okay. 18-year-old Sue, you are enough. You are worthy. You are amazing in your own right. Don't compare yourself to anyone. Run your race, live your life, and live it to the fullest.
Wow, amazing stuff. So we are now getting into what we call the final 5. Then we close. I will ask you 5 random final questions. Then we are done. So my first question is: if you are to change one thing in Africa, which one would it be?
I would change how women are viewed in Africa. Um, Women are viewed as objects. we are objectified, and I wish that could change. Yeah.
What is the best and the worst advice you ever received?
The best advice I've ever received was when someone told me kuti nyadzi dzinouraya nenzara. Yeah. And the worst advice is fake it until you make it.
Doesn't work.
Not for me. I'm
Alright.
as real as I come.
Alright. If you had to rewrite your life story, your life journey, which part would you rewrite?
I wouldn't rewrite anything. I wouldn't. Some would say, I wish my mom had lived longer. I wish, no. God is organized like that. He's an orderly God. Everything he does is for a reason.
If you had to make one universal law, which one would it be?
Crochet in every school. From grade 1.
All right. If you can't sleep at the middle of the night, what would you do?
I fantasize about the life that I want. I fantasize about where I want to get, and I imagine this world that I'm not in, and yeah, that relaxes me and gets me to sleep. I don't read. I don't, because even if I go on my phone and try to do TikTok, it just drives me crazy. So I just try and fantasize about a life that I like, and yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Sue, for coming. I really appreciate. Maybe I forget that to give you an opportunity to share other things that you are doing. Just share anything that you want to share with our audience.
So I'm also a crochet tutor. I teach crochet, and I've moved from teaching adults. I've been teaching adults for the past 3 years. So now my focus is on the youth, and especially from primary school, because I want to instill that love for using your hands and to nurture talent from a young age. So that's something else that I do. Yes, besides
Where
the
can
making.
you access the lessons? Where can the contact information and other stuff?
So all of that information, you find it on my social media pages. Each time I hold a class, I always post on my socials. I'm available on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, on LinkedIn as Chigorimbo. I post my classes. I usually hold group classes once every month. And I also have house calls for those that are my group. I also do house calls.
All right. Thank you so much, Sue, for coming. I really appreciate your presence. May God bless you, achieve more success, more life. I wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much. I absolutely love what you're doing. I love to see young people thriving and pushing their hustle. So keep at it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for watching this far. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Tell a friend to tell a friend. But for now, we are out. Thank you.